What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Blade Dive. My name is Parker Bohan. I'm your host for the show, and I really just want to say thank you again to everybody out there that is listening. I feel like what we have created is a community of operators, individuals, people, and experiences, all under one little umbrella that you can just push play and listen and soak in anything that applies, whether it's in life or whether it's operating equipment. And that was the goal. So to see it come to fruition is absolutely incredible. And to hear your feedback and see the positive notes roll in about keep this going, let's do just that. So I've often had it put to me that wisdom is knowing what you don't know. And whether you're realizing that from either a past experience or you're having that knowledge put to you and learning from your past experience, whatever the case may be, my guest today is Peter Colombo. And if you know Pete, you know that he is wise beyond his years, but you also know that he worked for organizations such as Mammoth Unbound and Snowpark Technologies. Logging thousands of hours behind the sticks, he definitely had the opportunity to build things for folks like Level 1, Smith Optics, Snowboarder Mag, and the list goes on. And we get into that for sure. But what we also dive into is that Pete will be the first one to tell you that none of those things were possible without him being lifted up by his team that he was around. We talk about work-life balance and that the job sucks sometimes. If you want to be the best in the world, you got to be willing to sacrifice a lot. We talk about being vulnerable and being an operator. And yes, both of those things are possible. Communication is a must. We talk about investment towards others, sharing the knowledge, and I'm really excited for everybody to tune into this one. So if you're at home right now, go ahead and grab a drink, kick your feet up, and if you're in the machine, turn up the volume.
Just go ahead and give it the juice. Already.
Okay, another day, another episode of the Blade Dive, and today's guest is no stranger to large-scale projects. I mean, no stranger at all, and is such a good operator behind the sticks, but he's also no stranger to tackling life and some of the challenges that may come its way, but learning those lessons, dude. And I'm stoked he's spending some time with us, and it's Peter Colombo. Pete, how you doing? Thanks for taking the time. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time to coordinate all this. I know it's an effort. The time zone isn't that big of a difference, and you're actually behind us, me being in the Pacific Northwest. But, man, Hawaii right now sounds awesome. A little jealous you're there. 75 and sunny, toes in the sand, in the water. Dude, like...
Yeah, no, man, it's nice here. It's always nice here. Except when it's not.
Yeah, I think that could probably apply to anywhere, but yeah, Hawaii in general. Yeah, totally. Being a kid and growing up and hearing the music, man, I just want to throw it at you and see if I can get it right. But Mele Kalikimaka, did I come close there?
Yeah, it was good. That was good.
I thought I'd totally butcher it, dude.
That was pretty close.
Well, close.
Nah, you're all good.
I mean, like, close is only good in horseshoes and hand grenades, so I'll work on that line, but I thanks again for taking the time. I really want people to know who you are. So let's start by painting a picture of growing up as Peter Colombo. Where did you grow up?
Pretty uneventful, really. I grew up East Coast, Massachusetts. I fell in love with snow at a really young age, far enough back that I can't remember, and got into snowboarding in, I don't know, second grade, maybe. I think my mom bought me a little plastic snowboard and go to the local golf course when it snowed, the couple times a year that it snowed. And I was hooked, was into it from then on.
And I think, like, I'm definitely curious, when did you get exposed to equipment? Was it like as a kid or later on in your career? How'd that unfold?
Yeah, I didn't have any real equipment background until like high school time, and that same golf course that we would snowboard at in the winter, I found myself working during the summer and got into doing grounds work there and mowing lawns, that kind of thing, which was funny. Got me a job later at Mammoth, later down the road when we get to that part. But yeah, I didn't grow up operating anything. My dad wasn't an operator or anything, but always liked machinery, but just never really got into it until later on.
I gotcha. We're talking about you interest in snowboarding. Where did you go snowboard first? Where was your local hill?
I started riding in New Hampshire, so I started going to, when I first started going to an actual resort, it was the first place I ever snowboarded was Loon Mountain, and then Waterville Valley became a home after that. Through high school, we would drive up there every weekend. Some weekends we drive up. We didn't have a place to stay, so we'd drive up Saturday morning, snowboard all day, drive home, and drive back Sunday, snowboard all day, and then drive home Sunday night. It was about a 3 to 4 hour drive, depending on the day.
Dude, that's not really that bad.
It wasn't too bad.
No, that's not that bad at all. So things are kind of moving along, and you're getting an interest in the itch to Strat, and you're having to drive a little bit. But I just remember you being this really good snowboarder. You probably still are. But where did you get that drive and passion?
Yeah, I mean, I was a group of friends I went to school with, and myself, and there was one place in particular where it worked out that you could make a takeoff and then space it accordingly to some, a landing ish. And it was fun. I mean, it was all we had at the time, and it was, I think the thing that drove the hunger for myself a lot was the fact that being on the East Coast, winter was such a short thing. It only happened for such a brief period of time, especially where I lived, where, we were at sea level on the coast. So there really wasn't, it would literally snow a handful of times throughout the whole winter. And those were the few days that we got to go snowboard. And then you'd spend all summer, spring, summer, and fall waiting for it to snow again with so much anticipation and excitement about it that you didn't care if it was raining out or if it was, what it was doing or how cold it was. You wanted to go snowboard. And this was like early 90s is the time frame. And at that time in terrain parks were at that time, a lot of resorts still weren't into them, or they were experimenting with the idea, but it wasn't something that was a showcase piece. It was more something that was kind of tucked away on a trail that was out of the way, and people didn't want to, didn't really disturb the rest of the skiing population at the resort.
Yeah, totally. It sounds like there was a crew and adventures that were happening along the way, but one of the things I realize now is that you were a part of a pretty profound portion of expansion and growth, like on the East Coast within resorts and snowboarding, and seeing the content that was coming out of places like Vermont and New Hampshire were impactful on me because I'm seeing it going, whoa, but you were there, like boots on the ground, checking it out, experiencing it, and I just want to know what that was like. Maybe fill us in a little bit of that.
So there was definitely a lot of progression for the time and for the area happening at Waterville Valley, Loon Mountain in New Hampshire. And after finishing high school, I went to my parents got me a present to go to Mount Hood for a couple weeks as a graduation present. And I went there. I met my best friend there and a couple other people I still am in touch with to this day. And my buddy that I met, whose name happens to be Pete as well, which is funny. But he was a year older than me, and he had lived at Stratton the year I was graduating high school, and he kind of convinced me to go move there. And just at that time, right up until that time, and a couple of years beyond that, I mean, that was kind of like the East Coast mecca of snowboarding. Like Stratton was a place that had allowed and had really offered that opportunity for snowboarding to progress. And I was coming into this, like, now looking back at it and seeing all the things that have happened and looking at it from a logistical standpoint of, resort operation. It was kind of right at the transitioning point when InterWest, they were a development company that had purchased Stratton along with some other mountains throughout the country. So at that time, Stratton began to transition away from the core snowboarding resort that it once was. But it was still, for me, it was really cool to be a part of a year. This was 99, 2000 winter. And it was the first year that they introduced Super Pipe. So Super Dragon at the US Open. And it was a milestone as far as like what that led to from that point on, but which I'm sure you know. But it was kind of like it was definitely a changing point in half pipe progression from there forward. And it was cool to see that and cool to be there for that.
Yeah, dude, I bet. And I think the other cool piece is that, so you bring up a really good point with just that, the acquisition of other places with InterWest and kind of how that rolled out and the changes that you were seeing. Was that maybe one of the reasons why you chose to go to Mammoth, the changes you were seeing? Is that
part of the reason I ended up at Mammoth, and a lot of East Coast kids ended up at Mammoth when that whole InterWest transition was going on? They also bought a stake in Mammoth that same year. So it had gotten around in like the springtime that, you could go to other InterWest resorts and ride for, I think they allowed you to do it for like 5 days or something like that. And a couple of people that we were working with were actually going to go out there and go to Mammoth for the spring. So the seed kind of got planted at that point. And then through that next summer, a bunch of my friends decided to move out there. This was the winter of 2000, 2001. And I thought I was into it. And then about halfway through the summer, I changed my mind and decided to stay in Vermont. And I started that season off in Vermont, and I talked to my buddies and they tell me how rad Mammoth was. And after a couple months back in Vermont again, and in that winter around January, I decided to leave Vermont. I went home to Massachusetts for a month and worked, and then I moved to Mammoth in kind of like the later half of February in 2001.
Yeah, right on. Let's circle back real quick to the point of you not going out there. There's a bit of hesitation. So I feel like that may be a story, but maybe it's not. But was there a bigger picture reason why you chose to not go out to Mammoth right away? Was it something personal? What was it?
It was, I honestly can't tell you at this point. I mean, I think it was more financial. I think that was more the deciding factor with it. Was I never came from any type of, like, my parents are both retired at this point, but my parents never had any money or anything. So like in making a commitment at that age, and I was like, 19, it was, if I went, I was just kind of like, I second guessed it. So but then by January I was like, fuck it, I'm going to go. And didn't really care. But that was kind of the deciding factor with it. It was just like Vermont was familiar, it was comfortable, and it was my best friend was we spent most of the summer together, and we he didn't have any interest in doing that, so it was just like maybe this is the wrong call. But then after a couple months into the beginning of that season, I was over it, and I wanted to go. And after I got there, it was within a week, I ended up getting a job as a trail groomer at Mammoth.
Yeah. Step one, get a job. So, I mean, but for me, seeing you do your thing and holding you in such high regard as an incredible operator, where If you started out on trails, what did that training process look like?
I spent probably about a week riding along, and then someone sitting shotgun and that sort of thing. And then they just kind of, once they kind of had a slight idea of the way the machine worked, they gave me a couple easy trails to just kind of like, here, try and groom this for like the first half of the night. And then, and then the fleet would come through and clean it up after,
cool. Right on.
afterwards. But it was nice because it was like, there wasn't the pressure of like, you weren't trying to like, operate in the fleet where, you're trying to keep up with the guy ahead of you, and, you got the guys behind you that are, so you have all that stress of just like trying to be in the midst of everything and not mess anything up. So this way, they just kind of let me like, here you go, like have at it. And it was cool. I was terrible at it, and I didn't have any experience with it. So yeah, that was kind of where I started. But then, as far as park, I had interest in park, and the first person I really met that worked in the park was Danny. Having lunch with Danny, and this was graveyard shift, so having lunch at like 4 a.m. with Danny. He was the first person that I met that worked in the terrain park at Mammoth, and was, has kind of been in Hawaii. We, the word hanai means foster parents, or like foster. So Danny's from that day, kind of to this point now. I mean, Danny's always kind of been a hanai father to me. And I mean, I love those guys. They're awesome. But yeah, from that point, he kind of encouraged me to like, try and pursue, do something with the park, whatever. And I don't know if it was his word or what, but like that year, they asked me to just kind of help like bulk push snow for Super Park, which was rad. This is when, oh man, I'd have to look. This was 2001, so this was.
Ooh, which era would that have been? Chavez, right? Josh Chavez.
That was. Yeah. Chavez was in charge of the park at that time. That was like, I can't remember which Super Park it was. 5, maybe 3 or 5, something like that. Like it was pretty early on in it, but it was over on Chair 10. It was rad. It was like actually an opportunity to like kind of intentionally move snow for building terrain park features, and it was rad. I wasn't doing anything other than just trying to help move snow and not get my snowcat stuck, but it was a really, really rad opportunity. And then the following year, I ended up staying in Vermont because I thought I was going to go to college. I didn't do any operation, which didn't end up happening. And then the year after that, I moved back to Mammoth and got a job in the park. I had, at this point, Oren had started running the park program there, and I called the guys at the fleet grooming to try and get a job with them, and they were full, and they kind of put me in touch with Oren, and then Oren ended up hiring me that year, and that was 2003, I think. Yeah, that was 2002, 2003, I believe. Yeah, and then from there until 2009, I was at Mammoth.
Okay, but before we get too far along in this, Pete, I definitely want to tackle the push road question of the day with you. So without further ado, let's roll that intro.
The push road question of the day.
I just love hearing our 5-year-old's voice every time I play that intro. I mean, if you got kids, you got to get them involved, and that was her way of doing it, and I'm excited about hearing it every time we record. So, yeah.
Good on you, man. That's rad.
Thanks, man. She's a huge fan, and it's just a little reminder every time that I play it that she's my biggest fan. So it's really cool. But the push road question of the day is something that comes in from all the listeners, other operators. And today's push road question comes in from no one other than Andrew Erath. You're already stoked. It's a good one. But yeah, get your question in. It can range from sarcastic, serious. They can touch on operations, but Andrew Erath, yes.
I miss Erath. I need more Erath in my life.
Yeah, dude, we all need a little bit more Erath in our life. Amazing guy. But today's question from Erath is, Pete Colombo, how many American spirits does it take to dig out a Honda Civic from a 4-foot drifted, snowed-in driveway in Mammoth Lakes, California?
At least half a pack.
Dude. Oh, man. He wouldn't divulge the answer,
Yeah.
but we were leaning on you heavily to tell us what it was. So,
do you know that we live together?
I did.
Do you know that-
I did know that
Okay.
much. Yes. Yeah.
Do you know that before him and I lived together, that I lived with Joe, and Joe and I lived upstairs, and he lived downstairs. So I think that was in that right next to the bowling alley.
The good old bowling alley. Yeah, I knew that from Jeremy Cooper telling me stories, but real quick, huge shout out to Joe Genevieve. Joe, if you're listening, you're a rock star, man. Pete, thanks for playing the push road question today.
Yeah, man. No problem. No, that was awesome. That was awesome. Yeah, that time, the time in Mammoth in that era was just so rad. But
yeah, I'm stoked on the push road question of the day. We've gotten some good ones, and if you're interested in sending in a question, you can do that. If you're tuned in right now, I would be stoked to have more. There's already been so many that have been submitted, and I'm just trying to whittle away at them. But you can send us a push road question that you might have for a guest. It can be funny, it can be sarcastic, it can be operations related. But hit us up on social media with a DM at The Blade Dive, or send us an email on thebladedive.com. That would be awesome. Would love for you to contribute. And I think, Pete, what I want to do now is a bit of a deep dive into, I want to dub it sharing the knowledge, because that's exactly what we're trying to do on the Blade Dive. We're trying to share the knowledge with other people who are already within the industry or outside the industry and want to come in and be an operator or pursue a career as an operator behind the sticks doing something. And I would want to know how, I guess my question would be, it's time oriented. You're trying to groom something, build something, maybe train somebody all at the same time. And I want to know what your process looked like there with how you were investing into others. Maybe you were selective, maybe you weren't, but what did that look like? How were you sharing information?
As I progressed with it, I always wanted to share. I wanted to try and share things, especially as I got older and as I got towards the latter part of my career. I wanted to share that information. I wanted to share those things so that maybe someone would take it and do something else with it. And I felt like I planted a lot of those seeds throughout the years with different people, but the person that I invested the most in has done the most with it. And I think out of everyone that I've invested time in, I think I invested the most time in TJ. And I saw in him, I saw that, like, I saw all the right things. I saw all the right, just the right personality, the right, like, type of, like, creative and mechanical and precision, like, thinking that, and the drive with it, that I saw someone that was going to do something. Like, I just knew he was going to do something great with it, and I wanted to invest in that. And I spent the last couple of years that I was at Mammoth really investing in that, in him, because I saw that in him. I believed in him, and I still do. I mean, he definitely proved, to go way beyond where I took things, and I'm stoked about that. But I definitely saw something special in him that allowed, that was worth my time.
Yeah, I see your point for sure. I mean, you're investing in so many other people, sharing knowledge, Some of them will grab onto it, some of them will not. Sharing it either way is super important, and just making sure that those who are interested in making a career out of it have a shot. And yeah, you can kind of like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And the ones that do grab onto the info handed out, you want them to take it further than where you took it. So that's super cool. I maybe kind of switching and redirecting really the question back at you would be, how did you progress? Where was it? Who was it? How was it that you took off with your skill set?
The only reason that at some point, my progression was solely based on my team, and that was everybody there. I can't claim as they were like mine personally, but I mean, they had my back, and that was the only reason I could be creative, is because I had a solid group of operators that were working alongside me every day, and their abilities were what increased my ability. And I mean that by the best thing that happened over what I've learned over all this time, my biggest takeaway with it was, and I still do this, I just do it in a different capacity, and I guess it's just managing, but it's utilizing the skill sets of everyone around you to the best of their ability to do what they want to, to let them grow and excel and continue to progress or do what they want to do, and giving them the opportunities to shine in the areas where they're strong is something that I tried to do with that team of guys that we had at Mammoth. And some people are really good at some things, but not good at others. And I mean, I think we're all that way. But it was because of those guys being so motivated and skilled at what they did, that gave me time to be creative. And that was the only reason I was able to like build more and experiment more. And, and in that capacity, it was because of the team of guys that I got to work with. And I can't claim ownership over anything. It was, at the time I might have a little, I definitely did more, but like, looking back now, it's like, I couldn't have done that without all those guys there.
Pete, man, like that is just so pure. If I were to break it down in its most simplistic form of how I would explain that teamwork piece and being able to deploy people's skill sets in a certain manner, it's so tough. This is how I would say it. It's so tough to bring in so many different personalities and have them all work together under one umbrella and not have things kind of get a bit frustrating every once in a while because you've got so many egos in the room. But when you can really adapt to the autonomy of somebody's needs with what they're good at, and you can plug people in where it makes sense for them to be successful and in line with what they believe and what they want to do, but it still fits within the department really well. Like, that's just such a, it's not, I personally feel like that's not happening these days, but that's just my opinion. Along the lines of that, what about the work-life balance situation? How did that?
The problem that I found with the balance thing was like, if you want to be the best at something, if you want to be really good at something, you pretty much have to sacrifice everything else in order to do that. You can't be like a part-time pro builder. You have to be doing it all the time, because it's like it's a learned thing, and it's like it's a skill that it's a perishable skill. Like you can, if I haven't been in a snowcat in a long time, and like, yeah, I could probably roughly do something, but is it going to be to like the precision that I used to be able to build stuff to? By absolutely no means whatsoever. Like not even close. Because I don't do it every day, and I don't ride it every day. So like, I'm not able to execute it at that type of level anymore. But if I give up everything else that I'm doing and just devote 100% of my time to driving a cat and riding my features, yeah, I could probably get back there at some point, but I don't know. But it's not going to be overnight. So yeah, it's a tough thing to balance. And I think that's why you see a lot of people come and go in and out of this industry. Is it's like, you have the ones that make a life career out of it, or like a long period of their life career out of it. But then you have a lot of other ones that do it for a few years and move on, and maybe it was just part of a fun cycle before you went and put that degree to work that you got before you found a snowcat, or maybe it's just, you had fun with it and maybe you don't care about it as much anymore. Or you just, or life's happened and now you need a more sustainable means to support family, mortgage, and bills, who knows? I mean, there's a lot of different variables, but, yeah, so it's good to balance for sure. But it's that tough balance of like, if you want to be the best, how far do you want to take it? And if you want to take it as far as you can go, you basically have to give up everything else in order to make that a reality. At least that's kind of, that was my experience with it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to use the word sacrifice. I think it's right along the same lines of what you're talking about with giving up everything. And maybe it's not everything. Maybe it's a portion of things that are revolving around in your life right now. But to be good at anything, you've got to sacrifice something. And when you're trying to be that good at something, yeah. And there are other things, like right now, personally, our focus is what's going on underneath this roof, and then also taking care of a 5-year-old and 2 dogs. And in a climate that is just crazy right now,
yep,
there's always that hope that the spring and summer period is going to help balance things out a bit better.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the only benefit to that is that in most places, it's a seasonal thing, So it's like you can have, if you have an understanding spouse and that's going to put up with it during the season, then the down part of the season, you're around more, you get to make up for lost time and stuff like that. But eventually you kind of learn that like, that doesn't really cut it. It's like, it's just like I think you're kind of torn between the two places that you want to be. I'm speaking from my own experience. And then secondly, it's like, you can't really make up lost time.
No, you can't. And there's no refund on that. I kind of the philosophy that time is the only true currency that you cannot have a refund on. No. And it's tough too, because you really want to be in 2 places at once, like you said, and you just can't. And that balancing act is really hard. And I think I really wanted to touch on that with you. And I know you've been through your fair share of having to balance life and work and being an incredible operator. So thanks for sharing that. That was huge. I do want to shift just a little bit, and we can maybe come back and talk about the balance piece, but I want to talk about the progression again with respect to how you go about it through failure. Because it's one thing to say, I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna do it, and then because in my opinion, you're either gonna do it or you're not. There really is no try, and so by doing it, you're going to fail, and then by not doing it, you're gonna inevitably choose to never experience what could have been, right? So, in any aspect of a job or an adventure in life, you're going to learn from those failures, and accepting those is so hard. And if you're a manager or a GM out there and you're approaching your employee as a dick and you're just being just a complete asshole when you're giving feedback, that's destructive to any employee environment. And I want to know how you kind of approach the failure piece and learning and progressing, for sure.
Most importantly, the second biggest teacher that I had, other than failure was just being able to go and ride whatever I made and try it the next day and see what it does. And you are going to tell yourself better than any one of your friends
such a good point.
how something rides. The second that you go off the takeoff and land on the landing, you're going to know exactly what's right and what's wrong. And once you do that, and if you do that, a few times or however many times it takes to really get the answer that you need, then you can make the adjustments. And those fine little minute adjustments that are made within a feature are the ones that take it from a good feature to a great feature. And that I always found was within myself. Like I had to ride it in order to answer that question. When I rode a park every day and I would get in the rhythm of like working, work graveyard, get off work, go ride for 2 hours, make some notes, go home, go to bed, get up, go to work, fix those things that, were, change, tweak, whatever, come back, ride it again the next day and have a whole group of guys that you do that with, like the whole team of people that you work with, and you all kind of give each other feedback and ideas and insight with things. That is where progression happens. That's where creativity happens. That's where, nation leading terrain parks come from. It's from that. It's totally from that. One of the best things I think we ever did, and I don't remember whose idea it was, but it was a great one, is like we would have weekly ride meetings, and we'd I think like once a month we'd have the entire staff do it, and then once a week I would do it with the other managers, and we would ride all the features from the beginner features all the way to the biggest features that were there. And obviously if your skill set wasn't to the highest level, you didn't need to ride the largest features. But the point of it was that you all spent time in every park together. So when you saw something that was an error, everybody saw it, and then you had ideas with why it was, why isn't this working? Like, how could this be better? How could this, you have a little too much speed here. What can we do to deal with that? How can we make more speed here? What can we put here instead? This feature is cool, but we can make it cooler. Like that's where creativity happened. That was, and it happened on the regular, and we did that in Mammoth, and it was great. And I love doing that. And it was, sometimes you were on the short end of something because you made something that didn't work and people were bummed at it, and you had to sit there and listen to how everyone found 10 problems with it. And, that sometimes you take that personally or get upset about it, but whatever, it's like, it's just to make the whole overall project or park better. So, make the corrections and move on. Like, it's okay. It's totally okay. It's okay to fail. But people are afraid to fail. So they like to point out other people's failures, and they do that because they feel like it's distracting away from their insecurities and their inability to do what you're doing. So like, don't be put off by that. Just like take it like a grain of salt and figure out what you need to do to make it better and move on. That's all you can do, or you can let it limit you to where something really tiny and insignificant becomes something that you're afraid to move past. And then then that becomes a restriction in that area of your life. And that sucks. Sometimes that happens with a big trauma, and other times it happens just because you're, it short-term hurts so much that someone said something so bad that you can't just like see past it and see past them, but chances are if you're dealing with someone that is secure about themselves personally, they're not going to be a dick about it. They're going to be cool about it and kind of try and be constructive with it. If you're dealing with people that just talk shit all the time, it's because they're just really insecure. That's just, that carries way beyond snowboarding. But anyway.
Yeah, but I think that ties into kind of the point you were making earlier just a second ago about the feedback piece. Like you've got leadership and then you've got feedback, and how those two things are approached. And I mentioned it too, but like when you're allowing somebody to be creative and that person knows that they need a specific component of autonomy, like that self-governance piece that allows them to just operate on or through the hydraulics of the machine, and you're working with the department to get feedback on how to better that individual. Do you think that that is a key component of being a leader, allowing that to occur and unfold? I'd like to know what your thoughts are. Okay.
I think so. I mean, I still apply that today, to this very day. I mean, I lead a team of, my wife and I manage a charter boat business. The business has a total of 4 boats, and we run whale watches and snorkel trips in Maui. And so I mean, I'm constantly, wintertime is our busy time. So like I'm in the busiest time of year right now, and our staff grows a lot. So on a normal season, we have this time of year, between fill-in people and people that are regularly on the staff, we have about 30 people that work here. And I manage that team, and it's a lot of awesome people that all do, very passionate about what they do. And it's just in a different capacity, instead of snowboarding and terrain parks, it's for whales in the ocean. And it's something, that's a different whole other tangent. But the point being is, it's like, I hire people as an investment when I bring them onto this team, and I try and invest in them and give them opportunities to grow and to succeed and to further themselves. And even if that isn't staying with me, I don't expect any loyalty with it, other than I just want them to be happy and have the opportunities that they want, and take it as far as they want. Some people just want a steady job that they can rely on and don't really want to do any more of it. And other people, it's just a stepping stone along the way to something else. And I think that in managing people, it's about creating an environment that is transparent and is honest and safe and fun. And it's an opportunity to grow, and to grow closer with the people around you, and grow closer to what it is you're passionate about. And at some point you hit a wall. That was why I left Mammoth. I felt like I hit a wall where I just kind of got bored, and I needed to do something else. And whether or not that was the right decision, it was just like, that's just where I was at that time. And, when I have people come up to me that need to go do something else or try and do something else, I'm not bummed about it. I'm happy for them, because they've, whatever I have to offer them, they've taken and utilized and grown. And now that's prepared them to go on to whatever they're going to do next, so there's not the growth in continuing is a really good thing. And that needs to continue to happen in snowboarding. It needs to continue to happen in terrain parks. You can't hang on a bunch of stuff that you did in years past. It needs to progress. There's always going to be like staples of certain things that you need, but there's, but in order to stay current, you need to continue to progress.
Yeah, progress is key. I think if you've got a goal in mind and you want to get there, or if you want to keep up with the trend, you've got to progress. Like you're absolutely right. Maybe along those lines, I know you mentioned Danny in the beginning, and kind of not really reaching out to him, but connecting with him is a better word. Yeah, connecting with him about getting onto the park program and the park crew. But once you were there, maybe who was somebody that you were around as another operator that you were looking at their skill sets?
In the season in which I started there, with all the transition that took place, Mike Gershner was really the only pro builder that was on staff that was like daily in a terrain park cat, and not this isn't including half pipes or anything. This is just for park stuff. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, like, and what was difficult with that? So like, there were a couple other guys that were there initially, and then they left after the first month or two or whatever there, and that left Mike with Mike being on one person and being on one shift, and then the other guys, the second shift not really having anyone super experienced. Do you know Isaac Smith?
I have not had the chance to meet Isaac Smith.
So
no, I haven't.
Isaac was a guy that I worked with a lot that first year. Isaac had been there the year before, the kind of year that I missed between like 2001 and now. He was someone that I spent a lot of time with my first couple years, and the main reason being is because Mike, just the way the cards fell or whatever, Mike was on the opposite shift as me. So like, I just didn't really, those first few, most of that first season that I spent, I didn't really get to spend a lot of time with him. So I kind of spent more time with Isaac, because that was just, we were just working together all the time. And that ended up being someone that had a lot of influence in me in that very first part. But Mike definitely had a lot as well. It was just difficult at, like, not being side by side with him a lot, that I just didn't, wasn't until like later on that I spent more time working with him.
Yeah, no, totally understandable. Just graveyard swing shift. Anybody that's listening, you can kind of understand that when you've got one person that is the builder working on swing shift, it's hard to coordinate the effort of getting somebody from grave over to swing, or vice versa, to train somebody and get somebody up to par, up to scale, where you want somebody to be with learning. So yeah, no, I completely understand that. And when you've got somebody that you can be around, then that's fantastic. Sounds like Isaac was definitely a little bit of a mentor kind of there with learning things. There, before we get too far along and into this, I really want. There are two projects that stand out to me, only because I was seeing how awesome they were, and one was Prospecting Idaho with Smith Optics, and the other one was your level 1 jump that you built at Sun Valley. But you also touched on and were a part of developing and establishing Sun Valley's park. So let us in on those. Maybe start with Prospecting Idaho. That would be sick. I think when you're given the opportunity to take a machine onto some private property and build stuff that you were building, it was just kind of like this new territory, dude. Like man, that was
a rad opportunity. So Corey Smith, from Smith, not the snowboarder, but my buddy Mark Oliver, that I had known from the first year I lived in Mammoth, was from Idaho. So I connected with him and lived with him when I lived there, and he was very rooted in that community, and Corey Smith was one of his buddies. So Corey and I became friends, and Corey posed this idea to me. So the caretaker that owned the property, so Smiley Creek in Idaho, there is a old mining claim that's 10 miles into the wilderness, into the Sawtooth Wilderness. And part of the clause with if I remember correctly, they are allowed to keep and maintain an access road to that mining claim, because although the claim is surrounded by wilderness, they have the right to be able to access the claim. So that was the opportunity to operate a snowcat back there. And the first couple times we went out to just kind of explore, they had like a little, I think it was like a PB 100 with a cab on it, that I took out there the first couple times. And then, given Sun Valley's establishment with who they are, how much business they do, and between there and Snow Basin, I contacted the Prenoth rep, and I just threw a cold call to just ask, but he was totally down to drop off a demo snowcat for me to use for like 2 weeks or for however long it was, in the backcountry. So they drive this thing over and dropped it at Smiley Creek, and so I was able to drive it out and build out in the backcountry. But it presented itself with its just a very different set of challenges, because one, I mean, you're in terrain that's like, it's all natural, but it's not natural like, it's not like maritime snowpack natural. It's like continental snowpack. So it's super light and fluffy and doesn't really pack into anything. So like, and it wasn't a lot of snow. So like in that area, it would snow a little bit here and there, but it was like, it never would really melt until the spring. So like it would compile, but it wasn't like Mammoth, where it was like, oh, we're going to get snow and it's measured in feet. It was like, oh, we're going to get some snow. It might be like 6 inches. And that didn't really translate. 6 inches of like super light champagne powder didn't really materialize into a lot as far as features go. But anyway, it wound up, we were able to make some features, and I kind of threw up a bunch of takeoffs to powder landings out there, and there was a different group of people that came through week to week through the 6 weeks of the project, and it was pretty rad. It was pretty cool to do and see, and I think it's funny. Like, I had to leave early one day because I actually had stuff to do at my real job, and I think the owner ended up coming out and like kind of like makeshiftly packing down a takeoff for Scotty Lago that wound up being like the biggest shot that anybody got out of the whole thing, which was pretty funny.
No shit, that's pretty funny, man.
And I didn't even have anything to do with it, so it was which was pretty funny. But anyway, yeah, no, it was rad. It was a really cool experience. And I think they ran that for another couple of years after that too. Like, I think it continued on after I left, and it was a really rad and cool project.
Yeah, dude. I mean, just to be given the opportunity to just have the keys to take a piece of equipment onto somebody's private property to build something is, I would have been speechless. But there were other things that you accomplished there, but you were in Ketchum, right? At the time you were staying there?
That would be Ketchum.
Okay. I've always wanted to go, but I've never been, and I think Sun Valley's awesome. Maybe fill us in on the town.
Yeah, it's rad. Like, Sun Valley is one of the raddest towns I've ever, and I lived there for, I forget how long I was there. I was there like 4 or 5 months, and Sun Valley's rad, absolutely rad. Awesome people, awesome town. I love that place. I've got to go back since then. I went back with SPT, I think only once. I think I was supposed to go other times, and it didn't end up working out. But I love that place. I think the coolest thing about it is like there's so much talent there as far as skiing goes. Like, it's unreal. And you'll go out early morning to Warm Springs, and you'll like, in the first couple chairs of the morning or whatever, and you ride the chair up with somebody that's like in their 70s, and you're like, oh man, is this guy going to be all right? Like, is he really going to ski? And then that guy will like go down Warm Springs at like 95 miles an hour, just like,
straight ripper down the hill.
Absolutely amazing. Like, just so much talent and such good skiers there. It's crazy. It's unreal. But like their quality of grooming is like second to none. Like, it's just unreal. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, rad place. Rad food, rad town, rad people. I met some really amazing people in the time that I got to spend there. And it's definitely like I feel I'm bummed I haven't had the opportunity to go back just with the way things are. But I would definitely go back and hang out there more if the opportunity comes up.
Yeah, I think that Sun Valley has definitely been on a list of places that I want to go. I'd love to take the family there and check it out. Like Ketchum seems like it's such a rad town, it's mellow vibe. But I do want to hit and touch on the other project that you were there for, which was that level 1 jump. That thing was so damn big. But aside from how massive it was, there had to have been some kind of goal, because it just seemed like there was. It was so big. You had skiers just bombing this thing. But was there a goal, like personal goal, company goal?
Yeah, so I think my goal with the whole Sun Valley thing and with that feature at the end there was to really just kind of make people notice Sun Valley. The reason the resort wanted SPT in there and the reason I ended up over there was to try and help put that place on the map in the terrain park world. And it's a very skiing focused resort, and to do that with the top free skiers of that time of that year was really key to be able to execute that. And when I set out to build that feature, I wanted everyone in the industry to stop and look at Sun Valley, even just for a minute, and be like, holy shit, what's that? And that was what I tried to do with it. And I think we came pretty close to doing that, because it became it was definitely a noticeable thing that happened for that season. In
100%, but that jump was huge. Like you could see that thing from outer space, man. And I think, like when you're right. Like when you're really trying to establish something and get kind of a foothold or build a footprint out of what something could be for a park program, you're paying attention to things that are possible at other places. But like, as I've mentioned before, comparison is just such a stealer of joy for sure. So like what's possible at one resort might not be possible at another, but the bigger picture is that it was accomplished. Like you basically took a place that was trying to establish itself, and not only did you, with the help of other people, do that. But dude, it was huge. Like that thing was so fucking big.
To this day,
I mean, there was a helicopter there, man, freaking flying around.
The helicopter was fun. It was. It's always fun. Helicopters are always fun. My buddy Beef took a photo of that where given the angle that he was, it made, I forget who it was, who the skier was in the image, but it made him look like they were like 20 feet above the helicopter, which was pretty rad. The other focus with that whole thing was, like, from the builder perspective, was making something look bigger than it is, and making there be a reference point where when you can see the subject or the rider of, if you can, at the apex of the trajectory over the most, but like with things cut away, happening at the place that's also the highest off the deck, off the base of the trail, was always an objective as well, to just kind of see how big and in perspective everything looks. So I felt like that jump did that a lot too. The other thing too, like I don't think I emphasized enough on it, was the only reason that was possible, that happened, is because I had help, and I had help from all the guys that were that worked with me that season, and they were all amazing guys. Some guys have gone on to be hand crew guys, have gone on to be operators, and some of those guys are still operating there now. And it was rad, and it was because of them that it happened.
Yeah, and I mean, once again, you bring up a point we've talked about a lot on this show, is the fact that it does take help, and the fact that it does take a team. Maybe instead of hitting it that way, I'll bring up another topic that maybe some people don't want to discuss, and that is the vulnerability perspective of teamwork and communication.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you're doing that, you're breaking down the wall of that competitiveness that can just really run rampant within this little bit of a boys club scenario with all the operations pieces. And you create more of this you create more of a culture that is a community. I think that's probably the best way to put it, instead of a look at me and look what I did and I'm better than you community. And that's just, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that that's key? That's necessary?
Yeah. I mean, it goes in any aspect of life. I mean, vulnerability builds community. If you're vulnerable with other people around you at work or with this type of thing, that vulnerability allows the other ones to come in and kind of build up around you. If competition is your main focus, where you're like trying to be better than everyone and throw them under the bus and operate in that capacity, that just makes division. And then you end up with a bunch of people fighting trying to fight for themselves, and dog eat dog kind of work environment, which sucks, because then you're spending more time fighting amidst each other rather than just working to make it better for everybody.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And so just as an example for everybody listening, like I had, I think it was episode 1, I mentioned that I had never had the opportunity to work within a resort program that was structured around help from a consulting business. And I had that opportunity last season with the resort that I'm currently working for. And through Snowpark Technologies, I was able to work directly with somebody that I had known for years, but never had the opportunity to work with directly. And that was Chris Jones. And it was literally like, hey man, I'm here to do this and I would love for you to help me. And ultimately it was like throwing catch or like passing a ball. I was just fetching rails and it was the shit. And it was probably the most fun I've had in a machine in a long time. And I'll be forever grateful for that experience. But I think you have to be approaching it from the right mindset to be, in any sense of the word, benefiting from your scenario. And so it brings me to another point. I know that you were definitely involved with Snowpark Technologies for a while, long enough to make some significant contributions, but I want to know what the biggest takeaway was that you had working for that organization, because there's so much that they accomplish. I want to know what your biggest takeaway was working with Snowpark Technologies.
The coolest thing that I ever took away from working with SPT was the way that everyone worked together. And by that, I mean everyone on that team was capable of leading the team, and everyone on that team was capable of falling in line with whoever was leading at the time. So if you were leading a specific project, like you were leading, you were building the half pipe or something, then it was your project. What can I do to help? Put me to work. Let me help you. And it was like that with everybody. And it was like everyone could either lead that as many people as they needed for that given time to make that thing, whatever that particular thing was, happen. Or you could turn around and jump in with whoever needed help in whatever capacity they needed and do whatever, and not sit there and bicker over like, well, he's pushing snow from here, why can't I push, or why is he edge cutting and I'm not edge cutting, and crap like that. It was just like none of that was present. It was just like, what do you need? I'll do it. Just no questions asked. And that was the best thing I ever took away from that. So that was, yeah. And I mean, you had a giant group it was a massive undertaking to make happen, but that was why it happened. That was why it happened. That's why it still happens. Is because you have a very amazing team of people that work well together, and they don't work. There was never any butting heads. There was never any weird crap like that going on. It was just like, oh, we got to do this. Okay, let's do it. And okay, that's your project. What do you need? And okay, this is my project. I need this. That was, that's how it rolled. It was rad.
Yeah, there's so many facets to this craft, to this skill, and I think when you can have a group of people that can come together and get things done as a conglomerate instead of separating and being individuals and having too much pride to do it, that's a big deal. I really, right now, I kind of would like for you to, as we wrap this up, I would like for you to maybe real quick speak to the next generation, future generation operator of what it looks like to maybe have some successes in pursuing a career in the snowcat.
So I think what really comes out of this is it's for a select few. And by that, I mean, there's certain aspects of this job that you cannot, that it's very difficult to find in other jobs. It's not a job that's going to lead to a very glamorous life or a very lucrative life, but it's one that, if it is something that you're passionate about, a lot of times, then those are things that are kind of a second thought upon pursuing your passion. And the thing that operating always gave me is it was a very fine blend of precision and creativity to creating something functional and in a lot of ways artistic. And in order to arrive at that, it required a lot of failure. And I believe that failure has this just kind of dark shadow over it that people try and avoid, but failure is my best friend, and it always will be. And it's also the best teacher that I've ever had. And whether you realize it or not, it's what's determining your progression. And it's always what's determined your progression is you need to try and fail and try before you can try and succeed. It is what gives success some value. It's like, it's kind of like the only reason that life has any value is because of death. Death can be looked at as such a terrible thing, but it's like death is the only reason life has value. If life never ended, it wouldn't have anywhere near the value it does because of death. And death is what puts a time limit on life. And that's the same way with how failure works with progression, at least in my eyes, is it's like failure is what you have to go through in order to reach success and reach and progress from a beginner to an expert at something. And if you're willing to do that, then there's no limit to how far you can take things. I think a reason that people may be hesitant to pursue something like this is it is something that you're going to experience and have to deal with failure on a regular basis. And for some people, they don't know how to wrap their heads around that. And I would say that if you're afraid to deal with that or too proud to deal with that, then it's probably not a great fit. But if you're willing to accept the risks of having to deal with failure and are willing to try it anyway because you're passionate about it or because you like the possibilities of what you could do with it, then go for it. And who cares if you fail, but at least you tried. It's better to try and fail than to never try at all. And if you give it enough tries, you're going to succeed with it.
Wow. Words of wisdom for sure. I think they're just headbutting the reality of the situation too. Like, yes, it's a difficult job. It's a incredible opportunity. And there's a lot of things that have to be balanced in between to make it work. And I think that applies, like we've discussed, in all kinds of aspects of life. But man, Pete, I really want to just take a minute and say thank you. I always listened when you talked, and I'm listening now. But I just want to say thank you for coming on the show, spending some time with me, everybody out there listening, and it means a lot. And I know your contributions to the industry don't go unnoticed, so I need to thank you for those as well.
Yeah, man, for sure. Yeah, it was great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. And hopefully there's something in there that might be a little insightful to somebody.
Wow, huge thank you to Peter Colombo for being on the show. I have always viewed Pete as somebody that's never really ever shied away from the truth. He's going to just tell it how it is, man. And that's a trend right now you're seeing on the show. People really wanting to share what it is to be in a situation behind the sticks. So we're going to keep going with that theme, man. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the show. Don't miss out on any future episodes that are coming up. You don't want to miss those. They are amazing as well. Leave us a review if you can. It really does help the show. And if you're already following us on social media, you know what's up. But if you aren't, look us up. We're at The Blade Dive on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Don't forget to send in your push road questions of the day. You can do that via email as well at thebladedive.com, or you can shoot us a DM, a direct message. Now, you know the deal. Don't be a dick. Fill your machine up with diesel at the end of your shift, please.